Hello, my name is Brandon Ramacco, and I'd like to go over a case today of someone with shoulder and wrist pain. And this person was me. So recently I ended up moving countries and moving apartments and moving countries again, and then moving from city to city. And this is with all of my stuff and all of my wife's stuff. We were moving all of our stuff. So bags fully loaded, 50-pound bags. It was a bit hard on the body, right? And after we're finally settled, my computer's set up, I'm sitting, and I have an ache on my shoulder. And of course, you ignore it at first, and this goes on for a few days. And I still have that ache, and the ache is pretty bad after a few days. Like it's not tolerable. And I've also noticed that I was developing pain here in my hand. And at first, I didn't link the two. I did eventually notice that they were coming on at the same time and seemed to be related to sort of my body positioning tended to bother me most in a certain position, which tended to be at my computer. And, not with lifting things, because you would think wrist pain, I just thought, okay, I probably just tweaked my wrist when I was lifting the bags. Oh, I probably just pulled something in my shoulder when I was lifting those bags, off the conveyor belts. And I just thought, it would just get better. It's an injury, but it wasn't getting better. In fact, it was almost getting worse. So what do I do is, well, I just try one thing at a time to try to figure out what these are. And the thing about diagnosis is it's possible to have more than one thing going on. So first, I started pushing on the tendons, and if it's tender here at the tendons, then likely a tendon is torn or injured. So, but there's no tenderness actually at the joint. So, myofascial trigger points, muscle knots, can cause referred pain to the shoulder, and the pain is almost, it is a very vague pain. So, muscle knot pain tends to be very vague like that. Some of the more common muscle knots referred to the front shoulder are actually sort of in the armpit for the subscapularis, or at the back of the shoulder, the infraspinatus. And I did find one point that caused like a tingling, almost spreading pain. And it wasn't quite the exact pain, but it was sort of spreading towards that region. And so I did a ischemic compression to it. And I was like, I don't know, it's maybe 10-20% better. Maybe it's could be placebo. My shoulder definitely felt lighter. So it was worth working out that muscle, but didn't really resolve it. So maybe that was part of the problem, but definitely wasn't most of the problem. That's sort of when I realized that maybe the wrist was also connected. And similarly for the wrist, I'm pushing on the tendons. No, nothing going on the tendons there. Sometimes you have myofascial trigger points here in the arm that refer to the wrist. No, nothing going on there. Sometimes the nerve is compressed pronator teres syndrome. The median nerve is irritated sort of here at the elbow, and so I'm working on that muscle. No muscle knots in it, referring pain. No, so couldn't find anything going on at the wrist where the pain is. Which again, initially when I first felt it the first time, I'm like, I probably just tweaked the wrist, but I couldn't find anything indicating I tweaked the wrist at the wrist. Now, of course, moving, I was really, really stressed out. Actually, having at least one full-on panic attack, couldn't breathe. Like, I was thinking maybe we have to call the ambulance. Like, I really cannot breathe. So I've gone through a stressful time, and there's some residual stress from that. So if it's not nerves here and the shoulder's involved, possibly with nerves, well, then it has to be sort of proximal to the shoulder. So, nerves can be pinched sort of at the pec minor, at the clavicle, in between the muscles of the neck, in between the scalenes, coming out of the neck, so in which case neck position and neck rotations may impact the nerves. And sure enough, what I felt was it was actually very bony where my upper traps are. Our ribs, the first couple ribs, are much higher than you think. They're actually about the level of the clavicle. So they're up, basically what most people think, oh, my upper traps. Right under the upper trap is where those ribs are. They're way, way up basically at the level of the shoulder blade. And so I was feeling, oh, my ribs are sitting maybe a centimeter higher than they should. And so all the tight muscles of my neck are pulling those ribs up. Now, those are also the scalene muscles, which again can pinch the nerves themselves. Like those muscles being tight can pinch those nerves. So, and the ribs being high can then pinch the nerves between the clavicle, your collarbone, and those ribs. So there's two pinching points that have sort of the same problem as the muscles are holding the ribs up high and the muscles are tight. So I like really yanked and pushed, worked those ribs down. There's a chiropractic adjustment where you just do a quick thrust, pushing those ribs down. So I'm pushing, pulling, shoving, moving my neck around to stretch muscles. And by golly, if it didn't work, and it worked for the shoulder pain and worked for the wrist pain, it was almost fully gone right away. And I ignored it. It sort of came back. The muscles tightened some more, worked it out again. I've started to do some neck exercises now. And particularly after doing the neck exercises for a couple days, it doesn't seem to be coming back now. Exercise is often the route out of a chronic problem. So I knew, doing some neck exercises would help with my neck posture again and help keep muscles from getting that chronically tight state. If I get all the muscles working together and I practice all the muscles working, tends to help with chronic tension. Anyway, I thought it was a good story of how I went about resolving my own problems. And, you don't give up and you keep on searching for the problem, and it could be multiple problems. In my case, it turned out to just be one problem causing an issue in two regions, and it was easily solvable. So, and I hope if you have chronic pain that you also have an easily solvable solution, and I hope that you get out there and solve it. Cheers.